Hello.
Because what I have seen as well is that the people that I've seen who've been really hurt have been hurt mostly by deceit. And that's also worth thinking about, that, you know, you get walloped by life. There's no doubt about that. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But I've thought for a long time that maybe people can handle earthquakes and cancer and even death, maybe, but they can't handle betrayal and they can't handle deception. They can't handle having the rug pulled out from underneath them by people that they love and trust. That just does them in. You know, it makes them ill, but it hurts them, you know, psychophysiologically. It damages them.
Tommy Robinson said in an interview that on previous occasions after he'd been arrested, imprisoned, or simply pushed around by the police and the courts and the state, he had suffered post-traumatic stress. But he didn't want to complain about it because he thought that what had happened to him couldn't possibly have been as bad as what happened to British soldiers and what is happening to British soldiers out on duty in places like Afghanistan. I'm not going to show you the Tucker Carlson clip. I took a few screenshots, but I'm not showing you the clip, not because there's any sort of a sanction on it, but quite frankly, I saw it once and that was enough. I just can't bear to see it again. And the thought of going over it a couple of times to edit it into this video, sorry, I can't even begin to bear the prospect of doing that. In the video I made just after he was released, there wasn't enough information to know why he looked so bad. I just remarked that he looked thin and ill, and well, I didn't want to harp too much on it because, quite frankly, if a man gets all concerned about someone apparently having lost weight and looking hollow-eyed, well, he's perceptive. But if a woman, especially an older one, starts to get exercised about such things, then well, she's just being mumsy, isn't she? And not to be taken seriously. So I held off. I didn't want to talk too much about it. But when more information came out from Rebel and from that Carlson interview, one thing struck me very forcibly. It was my reaction to that haunted look on Robinson's face. That wasn't just starvation, although it certainly would have been a factor. But let's face it, models starve themselves. They starve themselves even worse than that. And although they look like walking skeletons, and they don't look very well either, they don't have that look in their eyes. No, that look comes from something else. And you've probably worked out what my theory is from the opening clip. I'm not talking about sort of some jingoistic idea of being British or even being American or French or whatever. I'm not talking about race, ethnicity or anything, but in my case, I'm talking about Britain as an entity, a concept of shared history and common roots. And that's something anyone can accept wherever they're from. I believe Nigel Farage's origins were among the Huguenots, immigrants to Britain, fleeing persecution in France. And yet I'm positive he's as proud of British traditions as someone who could trace their origins back to, well, Hereward the Wake, if he'd had any descendants. Nubar Gulbenkian, a very interesting fellow, a business tycoon, an Armenian born in Ottoman Turkey, found his home in England, and despite his exotic origins and colourful appearance, always considered himself an Englishman and his history to be that of the British people, albeit intermixed somewhat with some Armenian extras. In America, whatever your origins, most of you will say, I'm an American, and it means something. It means that you have a wider family who you believe will protect you. And that's the way I feel. Well, starting not so much to feel about being British. In my case, I could say, I'm an English woman, and I could think that I have a British family around me, which, so long as I'm not committing treason, will look after me in a way and stand by me, even if I break the law and have to be separated out because I might pose a threat or I broke the rules. That's what we all used to think. All of us in the Western world. I'm sure that part of Tommy's outrage when the rape gang business came to light was his shock at the way the state, our state, was doing nothing to protect its family, actually was colluding against its family. And when he was imprisoned and starved, threatened, both himself and his wife and children, assaulted and locked up within reach of potential murderers, and denied not only basic rights, but the justice which any self-described civilized state is supposed to extend to its prisoners. In short, when his own family turned on him and lied about him and betrayed him, that will be the thing that will stay with him long after he's put back the weight. Peterson goes on to say that in his experience as a clinical psychologist, treating the results of familial betrayal are the most difficult because this sort of thing embitters people to the extent that they get trapped in patterns of self-destructive behaviour which are difficult to break. So far, astonishingly, Robinson has managed to avoid that. And my hope is that because he knows so many people are rooting for him, it might balance out the betrayal of the state that he's experienced. We'll have to see about that. But meanwhile, we have to consider what is the battle we are fighting. And I'm not just talking about Britain here, because it's happening in many countries on the European continent and in America, and quite badly in Canada, as I understand it. In fact, all over the place. You can bundle Robinson in with Peterson and even with Brexit, but especially with free speech, because restriction of free speech in a country is like the deceit within a family, when some nasty things are not talked about, swept under the carpet, ignored, and when the family goes to great efforts to squash down any member who does try to bring up the subject. What we're considering in Robinson's fight is the battle of people who regard their countries as their family and who are getting the idea that their families, for some inexplicable reason, are betraying them.
They can't handle having the rug pulled out from underneath them by people that they love and trust. That just does them in.
I'm very grateful for financial contributions. But if you don't want to give money, you can still help a lot by sharing this and other videos I've made. Also, remember to check your subscription from time to time, as sometimes subscriptions get erased for one reason or another. Till next time.